Right, so hi everybody and welcome to the second session on day 3 of the Civic Leadership Programme. I'm Katie Brown and I'm a doctoral researcher at the University of Bath in the UK. And my research focuses on the mainstreaming of the far-right discourse with Brexit as a case study. And I'm going to be moderating this evening's session. I'm really pleased to introduce Dr. Majid Khosravinik today, who is going to present a lecture on populist discourse and digital technology. Dr. Khosravinik is a senior lecturer in digital media and discourse studies at the Newcastle University in the UK and is interested in the intersection between social media, discourse and politics. He is an eminent scholar in critical discourse studies and has worked on a range of topics, including digital identity, immigration, nationalism, etc., with some extremely influential articles in the field, such as a co-authored piece titled A Useful Methodological Synergy, and edited volumes such as Right-Wing Populism in Europe, Politics and Discourse. He's the founder and convener of the Newcastle Critical Discourse Group and is on the board of some top journals in the field, such as the Journal of Language and Politics and Critical Discourse Studies. Most recently, he's been developing the model of techno-discursive analysis for the critical analysis of digital discourse formation and perception. He's going to talk to you today about the social media approach to critical discourse studies and its relationship with populism. So I'll hand over the floor to him now for a 60-minute lecture. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Katie. That was really generous. Thanks so much. As you may know, actually, I come from the CDA background, basically. The discourse part in digital discourse and politics is actually a prominent aspect there. My journey has been from a linguistic approach to CDA or discourse analysis into trying to see how the notions in CDA and notions in discourse theory basically can now be adapted to the new media context, and how this may change some of the assumptions that we have about these notions, and how this is also a very insightful approach in understanding what is going on online. In doing that, I'm going to start by going over, also there was an emphasis on trying to cover a little bit of discourse analysis in this. I'm going to talk about notions around discourse, different ways that discourse, the word discourse is being used, and critical discourse studies. And then I move on to talk about media and discursive power and how this is a key point in terms of politics of media and discursive practice from mass media to social media. And then I will try to explain what I mean by social media communication as a paradigm of communication rather than a platform or a specific site of communication among friends. And then I'll try to cover some of the, or try to connect how the corporate design of social media and participatory web in general is increasingly making the context populist and hence maybe facilitating populism in the way that discursive practice is assumed, which leads to what I call it now. Actually, basically, I'm trying to call for a more understanding of the impact of technology on discourse and the way this discourse is being produced, distributed, and consumed in social media, and trying to depends on who I talk to really. To CDA people, I try to draw their attention to the impact of technological organization for discursive practice online, but also for people from big data and people who already focus on those aspects. I try to emphasize how discourse analysis can actually contribute to studies of identity and politics online. Okay, so let's start by this notion of discourse, because we always use it a lot, and obviously, this has been like more than 15 or even more that I have been actually dealing with this term, and I come to new notions and new understandings sometimes myself, like what we should be calling it. So in a very simple way, discourse is a concept. It's a concept that, or it is a theory, if you like, that we have developed to be able to explain the process of meaning making, trying to explain how language or any other system of communication. This is, yeah, okay, we go from take it from the top for this slide. And the first slide was just an outline, really. So the notion of discourse and what this means, really, and why we need it. So my understanding is that discourse is a notion or is a theory which is meant to help us understand the process of meaning making. Like, how does language work? Not in terms of the surface structures, but in terms of how sense making actually occurs between language and its use. Another term, this is about language, analyzing language in use. Actually, in Lancaster, the module on discourse analysis was called analyzing language in use, which is the key part here. And this is not just about language, that I have to emphasize a lot. It's about any system of communication, how they work through a discursive understanding to communicate what they do here. So, and from linguistic perspective, when the term came about, they used discourse as analysis of language above sentence level, because they were analyzing the phonetics and then morphology and then the grammar. And then when it came to analyzing language above sentence level, then they had to somehow conceptualize a body of knowledge somewhere which comes into play when you read a text. As in, it fills in the gaps. It helps you make sense of what is being said here. So the understanding was that the meaning of a text is never complete without that body of knowledge that we bring into reading it. And that body of knowledge, which is structures, which is systematic, is actually referred to as discourse, which is the linguistic understanding of it, or linguistic definition for it. Then, of course, we have the term discourse in terms of how it is used in cultural studies and social sciences, sociology. If you like, you can call it a Foucauldian take on that, which would be a system of representation or structured knowledge, information, or evaluation systems, which again, which is like a cloud, and it actually organizes the way we understand certain words or certain sentences or certain semiotics, if you go for multimodality. And that's why sometimes we use the term discourses in place, which means that the repertoire of discourses that we already have in a society as the culture of the society or the context of communication of that society. This is actually coming from Van Dyck when he talks about how we account for the context, and he says that we should look at the discourses in place, and that's already the socio-political or cultural context of understanding for that specific discourse community. There are two this definition, discourse as in this Foucauldian way, system of representation, which is abstract, but it is there, and it helps organize the way we interpret linguistic utterances. And then there is another notion for discourse, which is different, and that is when we refer to a body of language or other modalities to be analyzed, as in like we call our data discourse sometimes. And this is hugely important because there is a lot of confusion between the two. And in doing CDA, we are usually doing the connection between the two. We cannot do one without the other. So we are analyzing a body of language, which you can call discourse, okay? But at the same time, we want to measure, investigate, problematize the connection of this body of analyzed data with discourse, as in the superseding systems of representations, which already are there and we share. And in analyzing the connection between the two, we do critical discourse analysis. Um, Paul G, who's actually an American linguist, has solved this problem as far as I'm concerned. And I like the way he started talking about capital D discourse and small d discourse, and to differentiate between these two. And I think that works well, because sometimes people refer to their language or the data as discourse, and then discourse as a more of a conceptual term, and then the confusion of it. That's a key point, and I think we should actually focus on that.
Can you perhaps give an example, Dr. Khosravinik, to how you distinguish between these two forms?
Yeah, for example, when you are analyzing, let's say you have a collection of news articles, okay, you are talking about your data as in like in the discourse of immigration, we found this or we found that. So you are referring to your data actually by saying discourse of immigration here. But sometimes you are talking about the systems of representation about immigration, and you say, oh, discourses of immigration usually makes this kind of assumption or that kind of assumption, and you are not necessarily talking about your data. You're talking about the body of knowledge which already you assume exists in that culture or in that background. So these are two different things, and we should actually be aware of that when we are using, especially people who are not from maybe linguistics background. They sometimes they make that mistake, and it is also indispensable to refer to the data sometimes, and sometimes to refer to this Foucauldian large structured body of knowledge that we assume exists. So that's one thing. The other thing is that the other ways, sometimes discourse is used as a specialized knowledge, as in like we say medical discourse, sports discourse, academic discourse, religious discourse. We're basically talking about a genre of language use. We're talking about a specific style or a specific rhetoric of language use. So there will be certain jargon, certain style, certain grammatical orders. So in that sense, this is also sometimes a way of using discourse which comes into the play. And when we refer to interdiscursivity, sometimes we're referring to, for example, using a religious text in, for example, sports commentary, and we talk about interdiscursivity or intertextuality in that sense. Like, this doesn't belong to this type of discourse, it belongs to that type of discourse, but we are making this interconnection for creativity and for fun or for various reasons. In advertising, you see this a lot. So that's also one thing which is there, discourse as genre of communication. The other two, which are very important to me, they are two ways of talking about discourse, which differentiates between the way discourse historical approach uses discourse, like Ruth Wodak and colleagues, and in comparison to a Faircloughian way of talking about discourse. So discourse as a macro topic, I think the actual term is macro topic relatedness of the body of language or other modalities. This is the way in discourse historical approach we talk about in discourse. There is no perspective, there is no evaluation. We say discourse on gender, discourse on populism, or discourse on Iran's nuclear program, for example, the way I did my research a while back. So that has its own advantages and disadvantages. Analytically, this is easier and better. There might be different perspectives within that discourse. So that's a definition that I can give you a reference for that with Ruth Wodak, and that's very useful definition of discourse as macro topic, basically. But a more usual and common way of using discourse is topic plus perspective approach, which is the way Norma Fairclough used it. Like we say, racist discourse, misogynist discourse, or Islamophobic discourse, or neoliberal discourse. So you already have a stance about that discourse. So it is about the topic, but also it's about it shows also where you stand in terms of that, which is not a problem to use. It's just that sometimes, you know, in major research, sometimes these confusions may cause vagueness in what you're saying. Otherwise, you know, this is really not a problem. And I do use actually the Khosravinik way as well. The other notions which always comes up is always about the relationship between discourse and ideology. Sometimes people say we don't need to have a separate understanding or conceptualization for ideology because discourse is ideology, which, I mean, if I'm not going too far, it looks like to me it's more like a discourse theory approach and post-structuralist approach there. But my view is that we have to actually distinguish between the discourse, as in your body of language or body of data that you analyze, and then move on to the superseding structured ways of representation, which is capital D discourse, and some sort of ideology again as a separate category if you want to make ideological critique. I know that sometimes these seem to merge into each other, but conceptually, I think it's not the best idea to completely merge them together. Key point in all of these is that discourse is about analysis of language in use, and this in use is the key, is very, very important. As it happens, where it happens, in the conditions that it happens, in the mediation technology that it happens in. So it's all of those factors: what media, what country, what history, what people, what audience, when. All of these conditions may be very, very important in interpreting the sense making, the communicated message, the message that the audiences may take home from the use of a language, a piece of language, for example. So critical discourse studies is social science. It's a way of doing qualitative, well, it's not necessarily qualitative, but I mean, it has a little bit of that kind of reputation. Sometimes, you know, people talk about it that way. But it's social, so doing social science, but with the entry of discourse analysis. It's like your scientific method is dealing with data and in terms of language or communication materiality or content to be analyzed. But you could analyze identity, power, racism, neoliberalism, hate speech, which also means that the CDA is also about problems. So it's about problematizing issues in society, as we will see later. So CDS is about how reality is constructed in and through discourse, through exploring relevant texts for both their content and form. Both the content and form. This is actually also very important, as we will see later on. Even though there are a lot of arguments that content and form are really not that separate, but it may be analytically maybe useful to keep them separate. It is also informed by the host of critical social theories in media and cultural studies, sociology, social sciences, politics, the list also is not really closed list. You can actually bring in new theoretical understanding, theoretical insights from thinkers who may not be within this canon. In fact, actually, there is good argument that we should actually go beyond these key philosophers and bring in new thinkers, especially in new debates about post-colonial CDA and trying to bring in approaches which is not necessarily assuming a European context, which is a separate debate that we don't want to get. So in terms of how we do it, we could use different tools, methods, theories to be used within the principles that we'll cover just now. In terms of methodology, as in like analytical method, it's very flexible, and you could use, for example, computers. You can, there's abundance of research doing through corpus linguistics. So many different tools are available, different corpora are available, different systems of doing it. A lot of it is also very, very good. I'm not saying that not everything that the machine gives you is necessarily good or critical, but obviously there are so many people that I know who are doing critical discourse studies by help of corpus linguistic tools, and that's really brilliant research. But the point here is that that is a bit flexible as long as you stay within the principles. For principles, we usually go back to Fairclough and Wodak 1997, a key article and key points. A, CDA addresses social problems, so it's not descriptive. It doesn't stay on saying, okay, this is the situation. It also needs to problematize the situation and show why this is the case and how maybe a different image, a different representation, a different reality could be envisaged by bringing the critique into this. Another point, power relations are discursive, or if you like, modern power relations are discursive, as in politics is discursive in modern world. Any legitimacy is about communication, and legitimacy is the essence of power, and power is the essence of politics. So in terms of power and discourse, we are also talking about the political nature of CDS. And we don't mean necessarily in terms of institution of politics, but everything that shapes your life as politics. So your identity is also political in that sense. Discourse constitutes society and culture. This is when we talk about discourse has constituting power. The society and culture of society and the shape of society is discursive. Discourse does ideological work. It's never neutral. It always has evaluation of perspective and stance. Discourse is historical. It's always built on what has happened before or what is happening at the same time. So there's always this diachronic background in terms of the way discourses may change or develop or take a turn for the worse, if you like. The link between text and society is mediated, and that mediation is the difference among some of the key scholars in CDA to, for example, the way Norman Fairclough tries to conceptualize this mediation through sociocultural understanding. Van Dyck looks at sociocognitive understanding, and Wodak looks at historical contextualization in terms of saying how the discourse and society interact. Discourse analysis is interpretive and explanatory, as in it's not descriptive only, but it explains, it tells us why things are the way they are, not just how things are. In summary, CDS aims to uncover and examine how discourses reflect, represent, reproduce, reinforce, legitimate, create, challenge stances, ideologies, power, relations, and everything. So this is supposed to be making my job easier in terms of what discourse can do here. So when we're talking about media culture studies in terms of discourse, and we want to see where discourse analysis sits. So in my understanding, in media culture studies, we have studies which focus on production, which, for example, how a piece of news is produced. And then we are talking about, for example, approaches in political economy, how the newspapers are funded, who owns what media, how they gather the information, how they put together the information, and all of that. That would be the focus on the production of text. And then we're talking about, in other line, we're talking about the consumption, like how it is perceived, how the audiences, for example, understand the television news. For example, the audience studies and reception studies and all of that. And then, of course, there's a very important body of research which focuses on the product itself, which is the text, or which is the discourses, if you like, in terms of the data. And the most prominent one, obviously, being CDS, but also content analysis does more or less focus on the content, but there are major differences there that we don't have the time to get into here now. So if you want to define CDS in terms of the way it differentiates itself from all of these, it's socially oriented, it's textually focused, interdisciplinary critical analysis. All those words are supposed to be a signpost to show the parameters against a neighboring approach. So we analyze text in context, and in doing that in an explanatory way, we also bring in process of production, distribution, and consumption. That is how this piece of data or discourse is produced, or text is produced, how it is distributed, and how it is consumed. For example, are we talking about mass media, or we're talking about something which is happening on social media? And that makes a big difference in the power of the discourse, and also in the way that this may do or do not ideological work. As I said, the discourse and power, they are very much interlinked. If discourse and power are not linked, then the notion of discourse doesn't make that much sense, really. Because we want to say that this does something. Discourse, the scarcity practice is an action. Okay, it's not just a representation, or no representation is actually just a representation. So in that sense, there is a very key link there, linking back to that principle that discourse does ideological work, hence it is political. And discourses influence communication the other way around. This is about how discourse is socially constitutive and socially constituted. Okay, that's the mistake. It should be socially constitutive and constituted. Okay, that means that discourse shapes the society, but also it is shaped by society. So there is a circular vision here. That means that is like we say, the way we talk about certain groups of people in the society shapes the discourses about those groups of people. And then existing discourses shape our understanding. That's when if you are young and you don't know any better in the society, you might get influenced by the discourses which are already available. But when you are critical and independent in your thinking, then you may decide to change the way you talk or the way you communicate certain stance or evaluations about certain groups. And by doing that, you gradually change that discourse, which is already there. So it is constituting and constituted at the same time. So there's a very famous quote on that, which I just removed because it was making the talk a bit too long. Okay, so when we talk about power, we're talking about two kinds of power, and this is when in 2014, I really wanted to see where this power is and how it is conceptualized and how this may be different from social media to mass media. So we can talk about power behind discourse and power in discourse. Very simply put, power behind discourse is about a communication which is already powerful. It's coming from someone powerful. Let's say it's coming from a politician, or it is on mass media. No matter what, it is powerful. Why? Because it can get through to masses of people, a large number of people. So in mass communication, anything that is on mass communication that is already powerful, so there is the power behind that discourse already. Power in discourse is about the micro changes that we make in our talk and communication among friends or family or in classes or in groups, which culminates in big changes in society when everybody does that. So one of them is more or less, if you like, top down. The other one is bottom up. I mean, actually, I'm going ahead of the slides. All of these actually will be in the slides as well. So when we talk about power of or behind discourse, we're talking about powerful groups as controllers of discourse. For example, mass media, politics and politicians, pop culture, anybody who is within the category of symbolic elite. And symbolic elite is a term, I think, I'm not sure if it was first used by Tim Van Dyke, but I heard it there. And that covers everyone, any special groups who have control over symbolic resources, and they can communicate to a large group of people. For example, power of media are important, and they have top-down power, which is the theorization in mass media. Power over behind discourse, large historical meaning structures that shape and govern human interactions. And that would be like mass media discourse.
Can we also consider like the TikTok video makers as part of these?
Very good point. Very good point. Depends, because as we will see later on, power in social media is really fluid and changeable and unpredictable.
Okay.
Because it depends. If you are talking about someone who is making a TikTok video who has 1 million followers, yes, it is power behind. They are already powerful because they have control over symbolic communication. But if you're talking about me, I don't have TikTok, by the way, but nobody is following me, then it doesn't matter if you have 10 followers, 20 followers. That's not, doesn't have power in that sense. You know what I mean? And that's actually the point that I wanted to get into in social media.
Okay.
But anyway, so power in discourse, as in power dynamic enacted or constructed within interactions. This is where people like conversation analysts get into details of how power is negotiated. You know, there's a lot of research on conversation analysis and how gender power controls over gender are controlled or suppressed in conversations. That's about macro analysis. So we got bottom-up social discourses versus top-down institutional discourses. And this is key. In social media, we do talk about bottom-up social discourses a lot. And the assumption is that. It's not always like that, but the assumption is that. So the point is that the power dynamic is different, but bottom-up discourses can also shape and sustain discriminatory and stigmatizing practice. It's not just top-down, it could be bottom-up. In some cases, the bottom-up is actually the driving force because the top-down cannot be really revealed because for political correctness or for all the laws, for example. So in that sense, the society is already quite discriminatory. So in CDA, we actually like both. I think we also covered some of these actually. So when we talk about social media as a communicative paradigm, I would like to see this paradigm, or the way I see it, is that it's not mass communication, it's not interpersonal communication, it is a new way of communication which brings these two together and goes beyond it. Okay, and that is the key point. It's a new way, a new paradigm of communication. That's why it's a challenge for discourse theory, for example. So in mass media, there's linearity between producers and consumers. Some certain group of people produce it, masses consume the text. It's very clear. Producers and consumers are clearly separated. In interpersonal communication, this is about dialogues, and it's not really that important because the power is not really big, but it could be big if everybody talks about it. But in social media communication, there is circularity of contextual practice, mixture of content producers, consumers, distributors. They could be all the same. So power is unpredictable, but it's really new spaces of power, and it could be very important. So in defining, in explaining what social media communication would be, it is not personal, not mass, but both at the same time. For example, when you write on the wall of, if someone has an Instagram account and it's public and you leave a comment for them, you're basically talking to them, but at the same time, you know that everybody else is seeing what you are telling them. So in that sense, you're doing interpersonal communication, but in mass. And that's the key point in terms of social media communication, because you are aware of the impact that your communication has because everybody's, that's why you see a lot of advertising in commentaries and trying to get more exposures. In 2017, I tried to see what could be the conditions for this. Let's say if you have these, then you have social media communication. So social media communication, not social media as in like a thing or even a platform or not social networking site, nothing. Anything could be social media communication online, any electronic platforms, spaces, sites, technologies, anywhere on which users can work together in producing and compiling content, perform interpersonal and mass communication, sometimes separately, sometimes at the same time. For example, when you leave a message on Facebook to someone through direct message, that is interpersonal communication. But when you put that message as a comment for them, for everybody to see, then this is mass communication or interpersonal communication. In the form is interpersonal, but in practice it is mass communication. And access to see and respond to institutionally produced text. For example, when there is newspaper article by Guardian, that's institutionally produced, but the commentary section could be a space which we can call social media communication space. And this can cover almost everything online. Anything where you can perform interpersonal and mass communication at the same time. And in most of most of the applications or the way the participatory web works, it's around these conditions. Otherwise, a lot of people will say, sometimes people say, oh, no, this is not social media communication, as in like, if you, for example, if you tweet and close the comment section or anywhere, you close comment section, then it's like, it's one directional, so it's not really social media communication. People kind of have a grasp of what it means to do social media communication, which it has its own positive and negative. So the positive aspect is that, yay, okay, now everybody can produce their own identities. The nature, location, and dynamic of discursive power in social media is fluid, changeable, and non-static. So the power is democratized now. So it's not just by some television reporters or mass media. Anybody can do this. And so social media carries the potential for advancing grassroots social engagement, which in many cases they do. I really want to emphasize on this fact for what I'm going to say afterwards. It depends on the context, on the geopolitical context where this happens. In some countries, some contexts, Facebook could be completely mundane, completely irrelevant, just for fun and nothing much, just sharing some stuff, and that's it. In some other contexts, people may get killed for doing what they do on Facebook. So it can give way to, it depends on the civil society, depends on what country, what context we are talking about. I have loads of examples of that. I have done research on contexts where there is not much of the civil society, so a lot of social media which are considered very old or outdated or irrelevant are still really, really important politically. So yes, this can happen. However, as we'll see later on, this is actually the potential is being reduced greatly as we go on. But what is the link between politics, power, and discourse? I like this point a lot because power is what society is to sociology. So if sociologies analyze society, basically political scientists are basically obsessed or think about power and not necessarily, and politics for me is not necessarily about, again, the institutional politics or capital P politics. It's all about anything that shapes your life, anything that influences your experience of life. It can be political. So personal is political. The way your gender identity is represented is about your experience, ethnicity, race, class, anything. Any of these identity factors could be pretty political. And modern power is symbolic and mediated, which means it's discourse. Again, this is about modern power, as in like the way things are now. Can I go a bit faster, because I think yeah, okay.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I don't know why we are now a quarter to 6 already, really. Some of the main points here: discourse matters in mass and social media, but differently, of course. But also, I don't want to get into what populism is and how this is defined, because I have a sense, and also saw that a lot of this stuff actually is being talked about in many other discussions or many other lectures. So I don't want really to get into that, really. But I want to get to the argument to say that the social media is by design populist, even at least in terms of the style of populist style is considered, and I'll try to see why this may be the case. So there was nowadays optimism around creation of new public sphere has faded. So people are not really saying, "Oh, this is so exciting. It's a new space for proper political engagement," for example. At the same time, there's intensification of discourses of self and other, and many people thought, "Oh, this is so good because a lot of niche identities can represent themselves, and they can show who they are, and then everybody will be together in a nice way." And actually, the opposite has happened. There is from discourse perspective, there is increasingly the impact of technology on discursive practice, which is the focal point for me, like how this technology is shaping up or changing the content and form of discursive practice, and how should we, or if we can still apply discourse theory in doing this. And some of these issues, for example, monetization of content and practice, like if you're going there and you're doing the political activism, I mean, the algorithm for social media, they would like to see if they can make money out of it. And it's not really someone sitting there saying, "Okay, let's make money out of that." It's just the way algorithm works, and all sorts of all those filter bubbling and all the stuff that happens through algorithmic regimentation, which is what I refer to in terms of discursive manipulation. For example, echo chambers, algorithmic ordering of the content, like what you see on your search is not necessarily what I see. So some social media platforms are much more algorithmically manipulated than others. For example, Facebook and all the subsidiaries, which is huge, like Instagram, for example, they are horrible in algorithmic ordering, algorithmic manipulation. But Twitter is less algorithmic in terms of you don't necessarily see things populated because you like to see them. Even though these days I see some stuff on Twitter which I don't really like in terms of pushing content onto you or pushing in terms of suggestions. So this is about indispensability of digitality as part of populist style and content. It's a big claim to make, and I don't really necessarily want to start a big debate with big names really in that, because this will be media determinist really. But any CDA research where they do not engage with the context of production in terms of technological context of production of that data, to me is missing something in terms of doing the analysis. So it's not just about the language, it's about who is using that language in what context, through what kind of platform, in what monetized form, and how much of power it carries in terms of getting to people of interest. So if you think about populism as content, I think I have to really, we did actually miss some time in that break really. So I think you have to give me at least 10 more minutes really. Is that okay?
Yes, sure.
Okay. So I would like to talk about populism as content in differentiation with style, because the style part is something that it's pretty much links to affective nature of social media and how algorithms cause or encourage or facilitate that kind of affect, and that leads to forms of populism, or this definition of populism in some ways. But in terms of content, populists talk about anti-establishment movements. They're always against this perceived establishment, which is not necessarily wrong, really, but that's the way they define themselves. It's negative othering to positively position themselves. And these establishments are usually mass media, political order, elites, and they have a claim to direct democracy, that just let's vote on everything, and I have, like Trump said, I have 70 million followers and Biden had only 40 million followers, so he couldn't have won. I won, I had more followers, how could he have won? And this is literally what they said. It's not a joke. And so basically it's reducing politics to popularity contest, as in like anybody who has more followers is more legitimate. So this is it's a pro-market ethos which equates popularity with legitimacy. Whereas democracy is based on laws, based on values, based on constitutions. You cannot actually you cannot kill, for example, a certain minority group, even if everybody votes for it. So this is just not lawful. So law is also there for that. Populists are always about homogeneous self, like British, and they have a very specific understanding of who British is, which includes obviously race and all of that. And then the other, which is sometimes, most of the time in British context, is immigrants or Muslims. And then, during Brexit ordeal, this was about EU nationals. So it's always very homogeneous self against some homogeneous other, which is a characteristic for any extremist ideology in terms of self-analysis. And of course, restoring the lost power for masses and all. So in the case of UK, there was a scapegoating migration for consequence of class-based economy. They were saying, "Oh, we are missing out. A lot of people are missing out." But why is this happening? So they didn't want to get to the bottom of the roots of the causes and say, "Oh no, this is because of immigration." But whereas the ruling power, they know that this is not about immigration because they know what they are doing with this immigration and how much of relevance they have to the economy, for example. But it serves them right. It really helps them to say, this is about immigration, because A, you can blame the racism on working classes. Say, you see these people. And B, you can actually, give them a red herring. Like that's the problem. Whereas it's not really, and they don't really want to get to the root of the problem. So with a double target of blame avoidance and class discourse, which worked beautifully in the context of the UK. So for me, I would say, of course, it's not always about working classes who voted for Brexit, but their vote was very important in changing the scale, really. So to me, it was legitimate grievance, but it was strategically and deliberately misplaced by conservative elites. So in terms of, when we talk about the style of communication, then this is actually where we can do a lot more micro-linguistic analysis as well. This is more about rhetoric of an address, like how much of pronouns of I and we use, false in-group and out-group dynamics. It's always about us and them. You just talk about them, and at some point you don't even know what the reference is, but you know that there is a them, and we should actually keep using that. Affective accommodation, there's so much emotionality, relatability, bonding, storytelling, and claims to ordinariness. You're the man of people, which means you basically say whatever you want, and that's good. So sometimes it's like, oh yeah, I'm very clumsy. I don't follow the political correctness. I say what I want, and then man of the people in that sense. And emotion, which means basically on social media, emotional coherence trumps argumentative rationality. Nobody wants a long rational argument on social media. Everyone wants to to get excited, or clear cut for and against kind of situation, or the other one's passion. And my argument that is not about people, it's about the technology which makes people like that. It's affective nature of communication online is the consequence of um, um, attention economy, because otherwise why would people listen to you? Because you should have that zest, you should have that edginess, you should have that sharp judgment for critical. That's why if it's controversial, that's even better, because more people come and see what's going on here and get entertained. And that's why effective communication becomes a norm online. And this effective communication is what has caused a lot of problems for political discourse, including populist discourse, like the promotion of that. I was actually the other day, I was thinking about why is it that they say if you have a problem, like medical problem, don't go online and check. No matter what your problem is, this is my case the other day as well. Whatever it is, if you have a pain, I don't know, let's say in your stomach, in the top right hand corner of your stomach, you just Google it, and the worst case scenario always is on top. The most horrible result comes first. Why? Because obviously they want your attention, because this is the way that website makes money. So obviously they want to really scare you. They really want to capture you. Whereas if you go to NHS website for this, will be calmly saying, oh, this is not a problem, probably this, probably that, which is not within the norm of social media, because NHS is public service. It has a public service remit. All the others, they have a commercial remit, and that's what happens in corporate social media. So in many ways, now there's colonization of politics by economy, commodification of political practice, salesmanship as politics, media product as politics. I would say it's a triumph of market logic and normalization of market logic in political sphere, and in a way simplification of what is good and what is not good in general. So effective subjective communication is a forceful political expression now, and it's normalized. Digital media are highly effective context. As I said, because of their design, they're like this. There is little. This is what the research showed in terms of doing argumentation analysis. You don't really see argumentation as in like Habermasian sense. I mean, you do see a lot of fighting, but there's no deliberation, if you like, or argumentation in discourse historical approach term on social media. So because people are not really providing arguments for what they believe in. They just want to believe in something and not the other, and that's it. So there is the upper hand of persuasion via affects. We agree, we believe in this person because we like him more, okay? Not because he makes more sense logically. So there's no argumentative consent making. Affectivization, of course, is very useful in some ways, but I think it should be really brought into social media discourse analysis these days. And the other thing is about social media being this platform of entertainment, so it shouldn't be taken seriously, which is fine. This is not a problem, even for selling, for advertising, all of these are all okay. The problem is that this is now being taken to the realm of politics, and the realm of politics is not being only about popularity contest in that sense, and that's why things are changing for the worse. Because I'm not saying that it's only because of social media, but I'm just saying that it's really facilitating and normalizing that kind of understanding. So in 2019, I wrote a short piece for the public seminar, and I had a question mark on title like if social media are populist by design. Increasingly, I think I can make that claim really, even though I don't really want to become media determinist. Really. But personality politics on social media feeds into commercial understanding that popularity is legitimacy and validity. Like if you have 1 million followers, suddenly you are not only expert on whatever that you are doing your influencing work on, but also you are qualified to say other things, and people listen to you, and because now you have symbolic power, and that's the thing. And if it was happening on television, for example, then there were rules and regulations to control it, or if it is on newspapers, for example, they also have symbolic power, but there will be regulation and there will be accountability, because you produce something. Let's say you write an article in the Guardian, let's say, with a very popular newspaper, okay, if it is, or the Sun, which is more popular. You write an article and then it's produced and it's consumed, but there's accountability because that product is always there, and people can come back and say, okay, who was responsible for this? Why did you say this? They can engage with that. But for social media, this is not possible. One, because there's no one product. What you see on social media is not what everybody else is seeing, because algorithms are showing different things to different people, and everybody thinks this is the society. This is what everybody else is seeing. And that's the problem, because it's not the same thing. The other thing is that there is no gatekeeping. I'm not saying there should be, but this is what happens when there is no gatekeeping. So there is no accountability for whatever they say. That's why there is fake news, because there's no accountability. You can say whatever you want. You should say something that catches on. So logic of visibility or popularity has become legitimacy, along with corporate algorithmic manipulation of news feeds, which have created fertile ground for populist perceptions of the world, and the life world, and everyday politics. And that's from actually that one piece that I wrote in public seminar. So if you consider what social media populist claims are, empowerment of the ordinary, reconnection with the politics, like people who were not really part of the political campaigns, or they didn't really care, or they thought nothing is going to change. Populists are saying, no, we are going to empower you. We are the voice of the voiceless, and we're bringing you back to politics. And that's what they did, according to them. They claim about direct democratization. Like, we always go and talk about this directly to the highest member of the political group, and we don't need all these systems of checks and balances, or parliament, or judiciary system, or all of that. We can just say, okay, shall we do this? If everybody says yes, let's do it. And then actually, Facebook was making a move to go towards that kind of political engagement. I think they stopped them. I don't know how. Also, they claim all opinions matter equally. Rationality is elitist. That is, if you get into, and if you say but and if and all of that, this is really, you're not really wholeheartedly in this, because this is about belief system. It's not about rationality. So if you can say, if you want to sit on the fence and say, oh, there are good points and bad points and all of that, usually this is not really you are not really part of the populist crowd, really. And there's priority of feelings over numbers. For example, in Brexit UK, there was actually a movement against experts, which is very interesting. And literally, some politicians were saying that people are tired of experts. I understand why they would say that, but what some voters did in response to that was quite opposite. Was really counterproductive. In the same way, social media companies or spaces have the same claim. It's about empowerment of the ordinary. It's about reconnection of masses with politics again. It's about direct democratization. It's about connectivity, sharing of life, feelings, and emotional expression. So you see that how much these two can actually overlap in the way that they make claims. I just want to, sorry, I think I changed this, but yeah. So I have a few slides about algorithms and how algorithms work in terms of the impact that they have on the regimentation of the content that you will see online. Bottom line is this code that algorithmic regimentation of discursive content on social media technologies impacts the politics of perception and representation in participatory way. That means algorithms actually are really the most powerful tools in shaping the political perception and representation, because they shape the way you perceive the world with impunity. There is no, you, you don't know who is doing that, but it's just happening, and the discursive consequence is very real in the way that you perceive the world or the issues of the world. The impact is there, the power is there, but the accountability is not there, and that is very important. That as we saw with what was happening with Cambridge Analytica and all the manipulation that was going on during the Brexit. And trust me when I say that this is definitely happening even now in terms of misuse of the personal data, and trying to impact people in this way or that way through digital footprinting and all of that. So in that sense, from a discursive point of view, it's very important. And corporate algorithmic distribution of content does not lead to deliberate irrationality. Actually, it's opposite. It's not about deliberation, which many people thought it was going to happen in the beginning. It's actually doing the opposite, which is about effective communication and connection, rather than proper argumentative, deliberative argumentation. Corporate social media does not show the society to itself. I mean, why should it? That's the feeling that we have, like when we engage with the social media in one way or another, no matter how critical you are, we are somehow thinking that this is the society. We are getting a glimpse of what is going on. No matter how much people say, oh no, this is just Instagram, this is not really real life and all of that. Still, we get influence, and we see that we think that this is right, because this is the nature of media. I mean, television was also like that. It is still like that. But they don't have a remit. They don't really need to do this, and they shouldn't actually, because they have a different order, different instruction. It is in the business of what can lead to more consumption, hence more profit, through attention economy, hence monetizing whatever that you do, hence leading to echo chambers and diversity and not diversity, polarization and affective tribalism, if you like. So these are the last two slides. When I talk about techno-discursive thesis 2018, I'm actually talking to the CDA people. I'm trying to say that maybe we should maybe I should be, because I could not put, oh, sorry, there's a hospital nearby. Because I could not emphasize enough on the impact of technology on discourse. And I thought that when you're analyzing discourse online, we should analyze the technology and discourse at the same time, because that's where the meaning happens. And we cannot do one without the other, because then we are missing out on the context of occurrence of that language in use. So in that sense, it should be techno-discursive analysis of a topic. So algorithms are a crucial part of analysis of discourse topics and politics of communication. Techno-discursive analysis is about meaning making. Again, we're going back to the first notion that discourse is a theory to try to help us understand how meaning making happens, and techno-discursive analysis is trying to take this back to home and say, this is what we should be doing, because this is a new context. Of course, you would say that in CDA, we've always been like that. You have always had to look at the mediation technology, of course. But when CDA came about, there was huge theorization on media and media control and media power and mass media. So CDA was on top of, or developed on top of all that philosophical and sociological theorization. For social media, we don't have that, at least for certain social scientific areas. So in that sense, to me, the main thing is to concentrate on this aspect and see how this new dynamic of communication may make us change or redefine some of the key concepts here. That one of those suggestions is double contextualization. So we should look at where the language is happening at the horizontal digital level, like online, okay, and how it is spread horizontally, and then how that connects to society. So you have the spread online and then connecting to society at the same time, because that's where the actual home of discourse. And that's why we are doing discourse analysis, not technology analysis alone or political analysis alone. So we go where discourse goes, and this is where discourse goes. It goes through the technology and it connects to society. If it doesn't connect to society, it's not even discourse. There should be engagement with new meaning-making artifacts. For example, smileys, memes, all of these are new data, new materialities of communication that should be considered, which I think it's being picked up quite a bit, and that's good. But also we have to consider practice as meaning-making. Like the patterns of likes, tagging, commenting, privacy control, geolocation, locations. I recently read a paper, and actually it is part of it. It's a chapter in a new book that I'm editing, and it's talking about how people are representing their social class through geolocation entries or check-ins and all of that. And that is the discursive material that they have used, which is very exciting for me. And that's what I mean by looking at practice as discourse, digital practice as part of discursive representation. And the suggestion that we should talk about analysis of content and practices instead of analysis of text, because sometimes, when you say text, it means that you're going to take it off from the context and go home and do the analysis of it, which is not. I mean, you can do a lot of things by doing that, of course, but to me, there should be some account of where this happened, and this should not lead to some sort of decontextualized analysis, of course. The main claims here: social media spaces are populist by design. And there's huge normalization of market values in politics through social media or in social media. I don't know if it's caused or it's just reflecting the society, it's just happening at the same time. There is normalization of affective connectivity over rational argumentation. That means I just like this person. It doesn't matter if he lies, like what was happening in the US with Trump. Nobody cared what lies. And there's really short circuit for memory. Nobody really wants to go back and see he just lied because he was saying something else 2 weeks ago. So but it doesn't matter really, because there's affective connectivity. It's relatable. You like this person, and hence you just want to believe in them. Reduction of democratic project to popularity contest, which we talked about. Populist ethos flow from social media society or vice versa, which is what we should debate. Like, is society causing or the other way around? And I try to put some principle in terms of digital meaning making, cross content and practice for what I refer to as social media CDS, as a special form of CDS, which is the introduction for a special issue for CDS, which just come out online, but it will come out in print later in the year. And these are some of the references that, my own references mainly, but I can actually give you other references if you want. Okay, I think I will stop now.